Brothers and sisters in the Dharma, please pay respect by bowing 3 times to Venerable Professor K.L Dhammajoti together. Bow. Second bow. Third bow. And without further ado, I now pass control to Brother Datuk Chia, Ang, to do the rest of it.
Good morning, brothers and sisters in the Dhamma. We are very fortunate indeed this morning to have with us a very distinguished speaker in the personality of none other than the Venerable Kuala Lumpur Dhammajoti. Since young, he was very interested in Buddhism or religions, and so he went to Sri Lanka to study Buddhism, and he studied his bachelor and master, and eventually obtained his PhD from the University of Karunia. And upon graduation, he soon became a lecturer, then assistant professor, then eventually professor at the University of Karunia. His vast experience in the academic field and his excellence in the academic achievements has taken him to many parts of the world. He was a Numata professor at the Calgary University, a visiting professor at the Shanghai Fudan Daxue, at the Hong Kong University, at the Pune University in India, and also the Fo-Kwang University in Taiwan. So you can see he's a very renowned world Buddhist scholar. We are proud because he's from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Okay. He is currently the chair professor at the Renmin Daxue in Beijing, and also the Rector Emeritus of the International Buddhist College, started by Reverend Weu. Before he became the Rector Emeritus, he was the Honorary Rector and also the Rector of the International Buddhist College. Now he is the Chairman and Academic Director, Buddha-Dharma Center of Hong Kong. He has thus far trained about 20 PhD students, and his many publications and books are available. Some of them are available here today to be launched. Not for you to see, but for you to get a copy. Okay? We will distribute the order list for you, so please obtain your copies. So now, without further ado, let's put our palms together and respectfully invite Reverend Dhammajoti to share the Dhamma with us. Bante, please.
Yeah. Thank you for your kind introduction. Only one thing I want to perhaps remark on, or perhaps I want to add a couple of words, because I have come from Hong Kong this time, and I have been in Hong Kong for nearly 20 years. Let me see, more than 20 years, about roughly 21 years, something. And it was mentioned that I was a visiting professor of Hong Kong University, but in fact that was only in the first year. After the first year I became the professor there, and I served as the correspondence professorship in my capacity as a professor there until officially 2014, but actually I had 1 year extension, and so I retired in 2015, and then I started my Buddha-Dharma Center. Yeah. So just in case Hong Kong Buddhists are listening to this, and they may feel that I'm not grateful if I don't correct this. Yeah. So I have many good and kind students from the University of Hong Kong, and many have got PhD, and they are also helping me with the teaching programs at my little center that I founded subsequently called the Buddha-Dharma Center of Hong Kong. And we welcome you to visit the website. Maybe I can project it later, if I can remember it, during the Q&A session. Yeah, go online and you'll see our programs of teaching as well as preaching, and also the religious activities. I have not started an institute for the sake of starting another institute. It's for the sake of integrating Buddhist studies and Buddhist practice. And it has been functioning for the past nearly 7 or 8 years, but got started even a bit earlier than that. Okay, I just welcome you to visit the website. Yeah, or you can just type my name, K.L Dhammajoti, or Faguang in Chinese, and you can also see I have done a lot of so-called preaching. Yeah, in English, in Mandarin, and also in recent years in Cantonese. Okay. Right, today, first I must thank YBBM for inviting me to give this talk, to share my feelings about the Buddha-Dharma for you, my understanding. And I've chosen the topic, Sūtra or Abhidharma. It's a question, yeah? And okay, now the purpose of this talk is to discuss this controversy. Where should we go to the Sutra or should we go to the Abhidharma? Is the Abhidharma to be respected, to be considered the Buddha's true words? And some people think that, well, the sutras represents the Buddha's direct teaching, and that is the final authority of the Buddha's word. Why do we need Abhidharma? And others even think the Abhidharma is nothing but scholasticism, or scholarship, or philosophy, yeah, and we can do away with it. And so I hope to discuss this issue. I hope to bring out also the significance of the contribution by the Abhidharma tradition, yeah, and this is in terms of our understanding of the true import of the sutras, and hence the Buddha-Dharma as doctrines and practice. Yeah, I want to show that it makes a very important contribution, and it's not to be disregarded. Especially among the Chinese Buddhists, and straight away when they see the word Abhidharma, they say this is Hinayana. And even Theravada is regarded Hinayana, and just simply reject it. This is very, very unfortunate. I must declare that I'm non-sectarian. I have connection with Theravada, I'm just explaining, and I have also connection with Mahayana. I also have Mahayana ordination as well as Theravada nation. So my approach is non-sectarian. Yeah. Well, you can look at me from different perspective. So I must say that I'm not a very good Theravadian, nor am I a good maybe Mahayanist. So I think at least in Malaysia they don't know, they hardly know me, but I think overseas they know me as a so-called specialist in the Abhidharma. So what is Abhidharma, and why I'm interested in it, and why I have devoted so much time, I've written books and dozens and dozens of research papers. Why, So I hope you can have some you can have some ideas about all this from this short talk. It's supposed to last only for an hour, although I'm very verbose usually, and most likely I will go beyond time. I have to stop and remind it. Okay, and also I want to highlight some contrast of opinions, some controversy in the period of the Abhidharma. It's an extremely important period, from the period of early Buddhism and then going down. Buddhism is a dynamic tradition. It continues to be developed, and then into what is called Mahayana and then Tantrayana. In this whole process of development, the Abhidharma, that part is extremely important. Yeah, it helps us to better understand the Sūtra, and also helps us to better understand the later so-called Mahayana development. But it is precisely this link between early Buddhism on the one hand and later developed Mahayana Buddhism that is very much neglected for various reasons. Yeah, and as I said, one is the attitude that Abhidharma is not important, only Sutra is important. Hence today's question, Sutra or Abhidharma. As I said, also another reason is prejudice, sectarian prejudices. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, this is the purpose, synopsis of what I want to talk about. Let's begin in the Buddha's time. In the Buddha's time, there wasn't really Abhidhamma or Abhidharma. I'm using the Sanskrit word. Once or twice I use the Sanskrit and the Pali to show that I do not mean that one is superior or perhaps better than others. Better, of course, in some respects, in one tradition over the other. But I use the Sanskrit to represent the general tradition of Abhidharma in India. And that is meant to include Abhidhamma, which is the Pali tradition. It's not meant to be sectarian. So let me make this preliminary remark. Yeah. So I was saying that in the Buddha's time, you look at the so-called Sutta Pitaka or Sutra Pitaka. There's a Sanskrit. What you can find are the Vinaya and the doctrines known as the Dhamma or the Sutras. Yeah. There isn't Abhidhamma in the specialized sense that came to be developed later and evolved into what is called the Abhidhamma Pitaka. Normally we think of the Tipitaka or Tripitaka, the so-called three baskets, as consisting of the Vinaya collection, Vinaya Pitaka, the Sutra Pitaka, and then the Abhidharma Pitaka. That actually is somewhat later. Let me tell you that. That was not the earliest situation in the Sutra Pitaka. Yeah. So we saw at first only the Vinayas and the Sutras, or Vinaya and the Dhamma. And the so-called Abhidhamma or Abhidharma Pitaka then therefore came a bit later. Yeah. And from what we have understood honestly, we cannot claim that Abhidharma Pitaka represents the direct words of the Buddha. But what is the direct word anyway? What is meant by the words of the Buddha? The Buddha Vachana, yeah, in both Pali and Sanskrit. What does it mean? What does it entail? And this is also what we hope to look into. Yeah. So in the Buddha time, there is no Abhidhamma Pitaka. But although the word does occur in the sutras, and where it occurs, the meaning Abhidhamma means pertaining or regarding or concerning the Dhamma. And another sense is it's a kind of eulogy, praising the Dhamma, the great, the profound Dhamma, the supreme Dhamma, yeah, the deep Dhamma. So that is the meaning of Abhidhamma. That word, as far as the word is concerned, that occurs that are attested in the Sūtra Pitaka. Yeah? I had given a couple of talks. 2 days ago, I gave one in Chinese, where I explained much more in detail. If you're interested, I think you can get the recording. If you have not attended my talk, how many? Anybody who was in my talk 2 days ago? Yeah, 1 or 2. So you have. I had an opportunity to go more deeply into, more specifically into Abhidharma. Today is not quite that. Today is the topic is specific about Sutra versus, if you like, the Abhidharma. So if you're interested in my understanding of Abhidharma and its development and so on, please refer to the video or the recordings, although it's given in Chinese. Okay, so therefore, the Abhidharma Pitaka or Abhidhamma Pitaka as such was developed, as far as you know, after the Buddha. But then, is it spiritually significant? If you are interested in the words of Buddha, do we need the Abhidhamma? Why do we need Abhidhamma? Yeah, that's what I hope to give you some answers. Yeah. Okay, so in the Buddha's time, what we have is Sutta Pitaka, Vinaya Pitaka. There's another word called Matrika. Sutra Dharas, those so-called specially in the Sutra in the Buddha's time, and the Vinaya Dharas, specialists in the Vinaya, and Matrika, Pali Matika, coming from the word that has the same etymological source as Mata in Chinese, in English. The metrics, the Matrika Dharas. The Matika or Matrika Lunmu in Chinese refers to a form of tabulation of the major points. It's a kind of a summary list, a matrix of the Buddha teaching. One example is, for instance, the so-called 37 factors, conducive to enlightenment. Have you heard of it? Yeah, 37 factors conducive to enlightenment. The Buddha gave a list. When he talked about his teachings before he passes away in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, he refers to 37 items. That is a list. It's a summary of all his teachings in his life. Now, Abhidharma is believed to have evolved from this kind of systematization of the Buddha teaching in the form, in the form of condensed summary, and then on the basis of summaries, as the source, hence a mother, mother gives the offspring, then elaborations and discussions and so on evolved into a gigantic collection of texts and doctrines known as what we understand today as Abhidharma. So I won't repeat what I've said 2 days ago about the meaning of Abhidharma, but I just want to emphasize in the ones that it must not be misunderstood as scholasticism, as philosophy. For me, it's soteriology. It's a doctrine of salvation. And as far as that's concerned, actually the whole Dhamma is. I, for one, would not label Buddhism as a philosophy. And that topic I will elaborate maybe on, I think, tomorrow or day after tomorrow, maybe. I can't remember now. I have 2 more talks in English. You can just watch out. I can talk more on that. Okay, so then we quickly come to the actual period of Abhidharma. And in the northern tradition, there is a very important commentary, Abhidharma Commentary, known as the Abhidharma Mahavibhasha. Chinese is Da People's Sha Lun. This one. Very extremely valuable text, extremely important. It was translated by our great master Xuan Zang, and look at him, he's a good example. He was a Mahayanist and he was specifically a follower of the Yogacara traditions. That what his, if you like, sectarian affiliation, you can call it that way. But he transcended the bondage of his own tradition. He went to Abhidharma, he went to the early Buddhism, he went into the Pratya Paramita, and he lived only up to 65 years old. Yeah? And he spent a very precious portion of his time and energy after coming back. I was returning from China, translating the Buddhist text. And he translated all these important Abhidharma texts. If he is very sectarian in his mind, he wouldn't do that. All the 7 canonical texts of Northern Buddhism, of Sarvastivada, was translated by him. And then he translated this text called the Mahavibhasha into 200 fascicles, not 10, not 20, 200. It's an encyclopedia. Yeah? And then of course he translated another text, you will probably see the name again later, called Shunzhen Nilun, Jnana Nusara, 80 fascicles. It's a very complicated, extremely difficult text. He did it. So he's a good example of what I'm hoping to promote. Our understanding of the Buddha's teaching beyond the sectarian current boundaries. That doesn't mean that we have to do away with different schools. No. That is not the meaning. Xuan Zang loved his own tradition. He never relinquished his tradition, his school. In fact, he founded the Dharma Lakshana school, Fa Xiang Zhong. But he realized that the true Dharma is to be discerned, right? With an objective mind. Do away with all the prejudices of traditions and deep into the very heart of the essential teaching of the Dhamma in the sutras and even in the so-called Hinayana. They call themselves Mahayanis, of course, but he was a great example. Of course, at that time he was attacked also by his other Mahayana colleagues, and Venerable Master Yin Shun also suffered the same way. Venerable Yin Shun was a Mahayanist, but later on he realized that to understand Buddhism truly, he must go into early Buddhism and he must go into Abhidharma. So, to cut the story short, he studied the early sutras, but he didn't know Pali. He did not know even English, so he had to rely on Japanese translation. So he trained himself in reading Japanese work. And that way, he assessed the Pali Pitaka. And he studied brilliantly, and then he lectures on them, and then produced a book. When he produced that book, now today that book is known as Fo Fa Kai Lun. I don't know whether general introduction to Buddhism. That is actually a record of his expositions based on early Buddhism. And I think for the Theravadians and for those who pursue the early tradition, that should be a very important book. Maybe you people don't realize this. But when he published that book was thrown on the floor by a great monk, a famous monk. I don't want to name him, but his name was mentioned in Yin Shun's autobiography. and say Yin Shun is Xiaosheng. Now Yin Shun is a Hinayanese, and he was rejected like that. Today in Hong Kong also, people respect me because of my position in the university as an international scholar. But so they are very cordial and courteous, and outside, but in the heart, in many at least corners, they have the prejudice. When I wear like this, I'm a Hinayanese, And then I heard, Venerable Professor Dhammajoti, yes, he knows the languages, he knows Buddhism well, but what he promotes is Hinayana Buddhism, Just one sentence, they want to destroy you. That's very unfortunate. Yeah, I don't need to be respected, but I think it's very unfortunate that even the Buddhists today, the educated Buddhists, also have that kind of mentality. That's kind of psychological complex and the superiority complex of their traditions, And I must say, of course, this kind of prejudice doesn't exist just in among the Mahayanis. The Theravadian also the same. Yeah, anything that's not Theravada, anything not Pali is not Buddhism. We should do away with that now. Yeah, and but this doesn't mean that we must obliterate all the traditions. Theravada is great. Mahayana is great. Pure Land is great. But for it to be a great tradition, we have to establish the authenticity of the teaching. It's a development of the Buddha's teaching. Abhidharma also the development of even the Sutta Pitakas. You can't claim that the Pali Pitaka represent the pristine purity. I think it's a very extreme statement of the Buddha. We can't even claim that Buddha spoke Pali. I'm afraid from all my learning, this is my understanding. We don't really know even the exact dialect of the Buddha. So I think I'm going to be scolded after the lecture, but I have to speak honestly. I don't believe in that. I don't believe that the Pali represents priest. But I do believe that the true teachings of the Buddha are in fact preserved in the Pali canon. That's a different thing. And to go back to the true historical teaching of the Buddha, and that this topic I'm going to talk about, I think in the Mahavihara or somewhere, the schedule. Yeah, I do believe, on the other hand, that yes, we have to respect the historical records of Gautama the Buddha preserved in the Pali Canon. And the Pali Canon is the only canon in an Indic language, yeah, and intact. That's the importance of the Pali Canon, importance of Theravada Buddhism. So the Theravada tradition is extremely, extremely important. I hope I'm not misquoted out of context. Yeah? And likewise, the Mahayana also is a very, very profound tradition. You know, in many ways, in the Mahayana, you have even a better representation of, for instance, the Buddha's compassion, the emphasis on the bodhicitta, putishin, and the Bodhisattva ideal as expounded in their school, and that kind of positive approach, you know, in Mahayana is to be appreciated. Yeah, it's not, to say the least, it is definitely not a deviation from early Buddhism. And you know, there are prejudices and misunderstanding on both sides. Huh? So I think you know that one of the purposes of me coming back in this period is to hope to find a little place of my own where I can set up some courses and according to my own vision, and in which I would like to inculcate a sense of non-sectarianism. Yeah, like what we are doing. If you go online to our website in Hong Kong, you'll see the courses we offer, which includes Pali Buddhism, we include Sanskrit Buddhism, we include Theravada, Mahayana, Abhidharma, Pure Land, Yogacara, Madhyamika, and all these courses. Yeah. Because we are all different. We have different temperament, different orientation, different liking, different karma, different social conditioning. We have to recognize and accept that fact. Yeah. So if one form of Buddhism may be more helpful for us, we need not apologize. Or for some, it's another form. Okay, so coming back to the period of Abhidharma, which I say is a very important link between early Buddhism and later Mahayana Buddhism. What do we find? We find a group of Buddhists known as the Darshtantika, this one, Darshtantikas, which means the illustrators or the masters of allegories, and then they are skilled in using illustration similes in their preaching. They believe in meditation. They are meditators. At the same time, they believe that they must have the mission of preaching. The Dhamma is not just meant to be kept for yourself. So they are meditators and preachers roll into one. Very good, great Buddhist example in ancient time. You find them in this text called Mahavibhara, the great commentary. And, they are the Sutradharas. They evolved from the Sutradharas, especially in the Sutras in the earlier period. Yeah. Later on, to cut the story short, they evolved into what is called the Sautrantikas, a school of a group of Buddhist masters who claim that only the sutras are to be relied on. The sutra, I say sutra in singular, represents totality of the teaching of the sutra. The sutra represents the true words of the Buddha. It is the pramana. So they say that they are sutra pramanika. They take the sutra as the ultimate authority. I think that is correct. The sutra must be the absolute correct. That's where you find the teaching. So they are very, very similar to the Theravada approach or the approach of early Buddhism. But this group, great master, you people don't know, hardly anybody knows. At least among Malaysian and Singapore Buddhists. This is very unfortunate. We have all the material in the Chinese. You can read Chinese. Yeah? So anyway, I want to say that, so in ancient time, in that period already, there was a group of Buddhist masters who are interested in meditation and preaching. They said that we must rely only on the sutras, not on the Abhidharma text. So they are kind of against the Abhidharma text, right? So in contrast, we have the other group who are known as the Abhidharmikas, the specialists in the Abhidharma. They say that the Abhidharma is extremely important, yeah, and in fact, without the Abhidharma, why I cannot get it up? Oh, this is number 3 already. Sorry. Without the Abhidharma, we can't truly discern the true import of the sutra. Yes, sutra is the ultimate authority, but do we really properly understand the Buddhist teachings? Yeah? So they speak of 2 types of sutras. One is called Nita Artha Liao Yi in Chinese. The other one is Ne Artha Bu Liao Yi. I don't want to frighten you with all the Sanskrit words, and so I try to simplify this. The meaning is, the first one is Nita Artha are the explicit teaching, with very clear meaning, the true import, if you like, of the Buddha's teachings. That is beyond the literal wording. And Bu Liao Yi, Ne Artha means teaching that are implicit. You have to draw out the meaning, what the Buddha is trying to say here, So we need to do that. What they say is that the Buddha preach, accordingly as the capacity and as the need of the occasion. Yeah, and so we must have a systematic methodology to understand the true meaning of the teaching. But today you do that. You go to Buddhist talks. Today you are attending a Buddhist talk. You listen to expositions. Well, that hopefully is a guide to you. Yeah? It's part of your methodology to understand the Dhamma. You want to listen to a preacher or a teacher to see, do I have any clues? Do I find any means, to understand the teaching of the Buddha? And you read books, and now these books are guides to you. It's a very strange thing. You love this book, you love the teachers, you love the preachers, and respect them, of course you should. But then, when you come to Abhidharma, you just ignore and think, they are not important. They're just scholasticism. Yeah? So, what they say, the Abhidharmikas say is that the sutras definitely constitute the true teaching of the Buddha, but then we need a methodology. And that methodology has to be a rigorous one, systematic one. And that's Abhidharma, in brief. To help us to discern the true meaning, the liao yi, the true meaning of the Buddha's teaching. So the Abhidharmikas then is in contrast to the Sautradikas or the Darshadikas, this Pi Shi, Jingyang Bu. You have these two camps at loggerheads with each other. Yeah, one say Sutra only, the other say, oh, you must have Abhidharma. In fact, Abhidharmas represent the true sutras in the sense. So this is the controversy, this is a contrasting attitude. Let me see. Yeah. Oh, I go back to that. I'm used to having it in a different format in my PPT. Let me now introduce to you a statement that you find in a very extremely inspiring and interesting Buddhist book. Again, you people hardly hear about it. Most of you, I think some have, called Chu Shi Lun in Chinese. It's Abhidharma Kosa Bhashya. I recommend it. And today you have, besides Xuanzang translation, you can read Chinese. If you can't, there are two good English translations. There was the great translation by the Catholic Father Poussin. I mentioned that into French. Yeah, and that French text has been translated in recent years into English. And you can refer to the English translation called Abhidharma Kosa Bhashya Chu Shi Lun. It's a beautiful book, inspiring book, and it teaches the totality of the Buddhist doctrines. You find cosmology there, you find ontology there, you find psychology there, etc. You find doctrines of karma, you find a large portion of expression on meditation practice, and realizations. Wonderful book. I have not come across a text as exciting, inspiring as this one in the Pali Abhidharma canon. We have the Visuddhimagga, but when you read this, you realize that Abhidharma Kosa Bhashya is brilliantly structured and extremely inspiring. So I recommend it. Okay, in this text was composed around the 5th century AD and by Vasubandhu. You know Vasubandhu? Shi Qin in Chinese, And what I'm going to read represents the position of the Abhidharmikas. They say, without the expositions in the Abhidharma, a student, that is a student of Buddhism, is unable to discern the Dharma. So what you want is to discern the Dharma. Yes, Dharma is in the sutras. But you need a guide. You need the exposition, that's Abhidharma. So it means that for them, Abhidharma is indispensable for understanding the true sutras. This is their position. Yeah, they're not rejecting the ultimate absolute authority of the sutras, but they question, how are you sure you just simply, subjectively, can you really understand the Buddha teachings in the sutras? Yeah, you need some objective criteria, and you have to establish your objectivity, your authenticity as a methodology. And this is what is provided by the Abhidharma. So without that, you can't really, much as you wish, to discern the sutra, the Dhamma. And this discernment of the Buddha's teaching, discernment of sutra, is what is called Abhidharma. So Abhidharma equals discernment of the sutra, of the sutras. You know the word Dhamma Pravichaya or Dhamma Vichaya. Think of the 7 factors of enlightenment. You see, in the Pali, in Theravada, you know what I'm talking about. You see, that discernment of the Dhamma is Abhidharma for them. That's the purpose of Abhidharma. Okay? Yeah. Then, in the controversy, they criticize these people who are so enthusiastic to say, all we need is a sutra. Abhidharma is later stuff, is scholarship, scholasticism. For instance, I don't like people to call me 学问真. I hate it, and they call Venerable Yin Shun and others, and also I think it's in a very unfair manner. You are just insinuating that we are only scholars. Oh, they are just scholars, they're intellectuals, they don't practice. Yeah? They don't understand the sutras. Do you really understand? How much do you practice? For you to criticize others, and no. Venerable Yin Shun's whole life is a life of practice. I practice in my humble way, but practice is my center concern as a Buddhist, not as a scholar, not as a professor. Yeah. Okay. So the Abhidharmikas answer and criticize this the other group called who are they called? The Sautranikas. And this Sautranika evolved from the specialty on the sutras in the Buddha's time called Buddha-Dharma, right? And so this brilliant Abhidharmika, that is a brilliant specialty of Abhidharma, his name is Sanghabhadra. Know this name, I'm sorry, a lot of typing, oh, sorry. Where am I? Backward. In my books, I'm afraid, in my published articles, there are always some typos. You have to tolerate me. I'm more concerned with the content, yeah? And I don't have time to do this kind of too much proofreading. My assistant, my student do it, and sometimes they miss that. Let me see whether I can. I forget that Sangha, G-H-A, right? And then Sanghabhadra, B-H-A-D-R-A. It's a small thing. So he's a very brilliant thinker. It's very exciting, inspiring to kind of feel the brilliant mind of these ancient masters. How they understood Buddhism and what were their concerns and how they analyzed, issues, and many of which are also applicable to us in modern time. Yeah? Sanghapata was certainly a very, very brilliant master, but you people hardly heard about him. Yeah? In my books, by the way, I quote and translate from Chinese a lot of very important explanation of him. Okay. He says, thus not comprehending the distinctive features of what they call the Nithartha and Nayartha Sutta, Liao Yi Bu Liao Yi Qing, the implicit and the explicit sutras, not being able to comprehend the distinctive features, they are different. He claimed, that is the South Radical master at that time, his name is Sri Latha. They so proudly say, we take the sutra as the authority. 已经为量了 Sutra Paramika. But then, he said, this is extremely illogical. It is for this reason that our school, he says, repeatedly ridicules them. So they must know what constitutes the true imports of the sutras. What are to be drawn out from just the mere literal wording in the sutra and so on, So this is the attitude, and I think I use this. Here, let me introduce you to another argument, expression of the same great master, Sangha Bhatra, in this text I have told you, extremely important text. Just like the Mahavibhasha, Tapivashalun, the Sun Lineage also exists only in Chinese, only in Chinese. The original Sanskrit was lost, and no corresponding Tibetan text also. All these very, very precious materials are preserved only in our Chinese Tripitaka. And all these were great contribution by Xuanzang, who himself studied all these texts, though he was a Mahayanist. He studied the so-called Hinayana texts. He loved them. He felt inspired by them. So anyway, Sanghabhadra says here, as the Abhidharma texts were compiled by the great disciples on the basis of the Buddha's teaching, they are proved by the Buddha. So therefore they are also Buddha Vachana, which means they are also true Buddha-Dharma. Read carefully. First, they admit, they acknowledge that Abhidharma texts were actually composed by human authors. And they are honest. They don't say that the Abhidharma texts are also a part of the Buddha's direct teaching. No. They were compiled later. But then they were compiled on the basis of the Sutra teachings. In one place they explain that Abhidharma texts were compiled by the great disciples of the Buddha, but he didn't fabricate these teachings. Say the disciple, he collects them from the scattered teachings in the sutras. Yeah, and they say it is just like the compilation of the text known as the Dhammapada. You know Dhammapada in Pali? In the Pali tradition, Dhammapada is straight away regarded as the teaching of the Buddha directly, but not in the northern traditions. Yeah, and they recognize that the Dhammapada actually was a compilation later, and of course it does contain the deep teaching of the Buddhas that are reflected in the sutras, but as a collection, the Dhammapada, for them at least, was not the direct words of the sutras. In a way, they are more honest, or maybe they are. This doesn't mean that the Theravada are not honest. I don't mean that, but they are more objective in that way. Yeah. The Dhammapada, the northern tradition, northern text, also was extremely important for them. But they knew, they acknowledged that it was not the direct teaching of the Buddha. It was a collection, of the teachings that you can find in the sutras, collected by the disciples. It's just like that. So, compiled by the great disciples, but on the basis of the Buddha teaching. And then they were approved by the Buddha. For a text like Dhammapada to be included in the Sutta Pitaka, it means that it has been approved by the tradition. It has authenticity. It has reliability. So therefore, they are also the Buddha's word in that sense. Likewise, in other words, the Abhidharma texts were not, you can't say that they were directly discussed by the Buddha, but they were based on the teaching in the sutra, elaborated on the basis of what we saw just now as matrika, the matrices. Therefore, they were also Buddha Vachana. This is a very broad perspective of what constitutes the Buddha-Dharma. Samosa Fofa. What constitutes the Buddha's word? Buddha Vachana for you. So as they are in accord with the knowledge, we know fully. That's very important. Knows fully means not just intellectually, but with spiritual insight. The word is parijñā. I don't want to go into the grammar. We have a Sanskrit and Pali grammar book here if you're interested later. The causes and effects of defilements and purifications. But this defilement, purifications constitute the totality of the concern of Buddhism, of the Buddhist. Why do we practice the Dharma? Because we want to purge ourselves of all this impurity in the sense of being free from all the perturbances, disturbances in the mind called defilements, whānau. We want to clear the whānau, and therefore to come to a state of permanent appeasement, peace, calm. That's what you want as a human being. Not just scholarship, not just so-called moral purity per se, but all this, right, serving as means for the ultimate purpose of liberation. You want to study Buddhism, not just to pass an exam, to get your PhD, to be a scholar, to be respected, but you want to find ultimate meaning of your existence as a human being, and to be free ultimately from the human existential predicament known as dukkha. That's the true purpose of Buddhism. So Buddhism is concerned with what is called defilement, or I think a better word is pollution, or corruption on the one hand, and the so-called purification on the other. 就是我们说这个what we call 杂 in Chinese 杂染 and 清净. This considers the totality of the Buddhist concern, and Abhidharma is what they're saying. Abhidharma is concerned with this, nothing less than this. So therefore they are sutras, because they are precisely the concerns of the sutras. So therefore they are the sutras. If what has been approved by the Buddha is not Buddha Vachana, then innumerable sutras would have to be abandoned. Do you know what I mean? Look at the Dhammapada. They are just stanzas. Are you going to say that because it doesn't start with Evang Me Sutang Rushi, then they are not the sutra? No. They are also sutras. But then, as I've said, the attitude is that these sutras are not directly spoken by the Buddha, but nonetheless, in the true sense, they are sutras. They also represent the true teaching of the Buddha, even though not directly word by word spoken by the Buddha, And what about these many stories? What about Jatakas? All these are part of the Navanga, Dwadasanga, the ninefold or 12-fold division of the Buddha Vachanas. They are all Buddha Vachanas. But strictly speaking, only the first is upheld as Sutra. You know what I mean? You have Sutra, Yaya, Vyakarana, Gatha, and so on and so on. Do you understand? The ninefold division or the 12-fold divisions. Okay? It is a scheme to classify the Buddha's teaching in terms of the different genres. Today we cannot spend time to diverge into this, but this is basic Buddhism. So when you look at this ninefold division or 12-fold division of the Buddha Vachana, you find that only the first one is called Sutra. The rest are not called Sutra, but still they are Buddha Vachanas. So they say, therefore, it is in this same manner that we should understand the Abhidharma as Sutra. The last anga, the last so-called limb, out of the 9 or out of the 12, represents the Abhidharma or Abhidharma. Otherwise, you have to abandon all the other 8. You will take only the first. Only any sutra that is entitled as sutra is to be regarded as sutra. The rest are not. In fact, there is the argument even in the Pali tradition. Southern Master Sudina later on say that the Buddha teaching are those which contains the title sutta. If the word sutta is not there, they are not. He said, he was one of the great Abhidharma master in the Pali tradition. He said that they are not Buddha Vachana. So this question of sutra Abhidharma, and Abhidharma, in what sense can it be treated as sutras? So in what sense they are to be called sutras? And so on, has been a controversy since ancient time in the Abhidharma period. And in the northern tradition especially, the specialists in Abhidharma brilliantly answer this criticism and explain their position. This is what I hope to highlight. And here I just now talk about 12 anga. This is in the northern traditions. 12 fold classification in the Theravada. There are 9. Sutta, Geya, Vyakarana, and so on. Gatha, etc. And you look at Sanghabhadra's, the same master, his explanation of what sutra is, you realize that he understands the Abhidharma in the same way. He says by sutra, that means the first anga. Are you following me? First anga is sutta. Second anga is, in Pali is Geya, in Sanskrit Geya. Third one is Vyakarana, and so on. So the first one, sutra, when he explained one by one, he started with sutra, he said this is sutra. By sutra is meant that which assumes and contains all the words which are called with the firm principles of both conventional and conventional and absolute truths. Sutras in this sense, this important precision, are either discoursed by the Buddha. Yes, whatever they are direct discourse of Buddha, of course, is a sutra. But also, they can be discoursed by the disciples. They are also sutras. In fact, in the Pali canon also, you have great nuns like Dhammadina preaching. These are all collected in the Sutta Pitakas. So that attitude has always been there, even in the Buddha's time. So therefore, sutra in this sense are either discoursed by the Buddha or by the disciple. I'm translating from the Chinese. If you're interested, you can find the Chinese. Right? For the latter discoursed, that means that those discoursed by the disciples, the latter discourse, because the content was approved by the Buddha. That is a very broad sense of the sutras, broad perspective sutra. Yeah. So now I want to go quickly to give you an example, right, of how the Mahayana look at their sutra as sutras. Our Mahayana sutra is just a fabrication, but it has the same significance for the understanding of Abhidharmas. Our Abhidharma Sutra can, in what sense they can be regarded as sutras? In what sense, in what way they can help us to understand the sutras? In fact, they are the sutras. Yeah. So you find that what I'm trying to say is that in the Abhidharma period, already the Abhidharma people, especially, have had to answer that question. This is what I've seen how they represent themselves. Answer that question. We find the same attitude when Mahayana developed. They said basically the same thing, extremely interesting. And when you come to Mahayana, suddenly, as it were, a huge bout of literature, the Mahayana Sutras just appeared. So are they the real words of the Buddha? Are they sutras? Yes, for them they are the sutras. Now some people say, oh, this is just dishonesty, fabrications, put to the mouth of truth. But we should not look at them in this way. Yes, they are fabrications, they are forgeries in any religious tradition, but the profound Mahayana sutras can be truly regarded as sutras. So in what sense? Certainly not in the sense that they were directly spoken by the Buddha, 2,500 years ago, in Magadha, and those, not in that sense, like not in the same sense as sutras say in the Pali canon. So, but then in what sense? Well, in the sense of what we have seen, as indicated, explained by the Abhidharmikas people, the Sanghapatra. Let me introduce you to this. Tell me the time. I don't know the time. I transcend time sometimes. So I'm going beyond time, but I have to finish this. Okay. So let me introduce you. That day when I was giving the Chinese lecture, I wanted to introduce this in Chinese, but then I had no time again. So today I want to make sure. I did say it in my lecture at BGF. If you go online, probably you can see I quoted this sutra. This is from a text known as the Asta Sahasrika Prajna Paramita. In Chinese is 八千颂般若. So Prajna Paramita in 8,000 lines. It's a very, very important text. By the way, I have brought this my Chinese, my Sanskrit grammar book, right? It's completely focused on this text. Yeah, and when you learn the Sanskrit from my book, from lesson 1 onward, anybody can follow without the ABC of Sanskrit. You are from day 1, right? Led to understand all these Mahayana terms and concepts and terminologies, or in Sanskrit, and then you are led to read more and more complex sentences, phrases, sentences, and passages in this text that I'm quoting here. It's very, very important. Because why this text is very important? Because we believe from our studies that this represents the earliest Prajna Paramita text. Prajna Paramita literature is a huge bout of literature, but this one we know is the first one. Of course, not in the extant form. The extant form is already Sanskritized We believe that originally it was composed in what is called a Prakrit, a dialect. Huh? We don't quite know what dialect it is, but it's like similar to Pali. Pali is also a dialect, yeah. And it went through a process of a Sanskritization. The text we have it today in the library, the text that I have presented in this my Sanskrit book, is already a later version. It's already Sanskritized. Huh? And also, I believe that in terms of the textual evolution, it began with just chapter 1. Even chapter 1 has to be expanded, and then it evolved into various chapters. So I want to, therefore, it's historically it's very important. It represents the position of the emerging Mahayanas at that time. They were emerging as a new movement. So they had to address this question. Is the teaching called Prajna Paramita that we are talking about, presenting as a new doctrine of Prajna, does it represent the Buddha's true teaching? So can this Mahayana Sutra be really regarded as a sutra? Are we entitled to speak like this? So if you accept their position, then you can see that they are not trying to fabricate, because this is their own conviction that this is true teaching of the Buddha. After all, the Pali Sutras, you can't believe that the Buddha always starts, as the sutra says, Evang me sutang, this is supposed to be added, and this is supposed to refer to Ananda anyway, right? And the discourse of the Buddha becomes, you see a lot of stock phrases, stereotype kind of expressions. You can't believe that Buddha keep on repeating himself like that, So in that sense, even the sutras cannot be word by word the discourse by the Buddha himself. There has been a process of editing even in the Pali traditions. Yeah. So if you can tolerate and accept in that way, then you should be able to see these Mahayana Sutras and Abhidharma in the same way. Not all Mahayana Sutras, not all Abhidharma texts, but at least the authentic, the genuine ones. Yeah. So this is what they say. As I said, they have to, at that time, at the very outset, at the very beginning, they have to address this question. Yeah. Whether now we are presenting a so-called Mahayana Sutras, can we claim that they are also Sutra? Of course, the answer is yes. Why? Let me read it. So here you see, very interesting, a dialogue between Subhuti and Sariputra. We know both appear as among the foremost disciples of the historical Buddha. It's very interesting. It's like Subhuti represents the new kind of movement, and Sariputra represents the mainstream orthodox movement, traditional Buddhism. The Subhuti is saying, Subhuti understands that Sariputra has some doubt in his mind. Oh, what is being discussed by Sariputra, as later on we call it emptiness, but it's very interesting in this text, in the earlier part, even the word emptiness doesn't occur. It's a doctrine of no self. It's a continuation of the Pali tradition of anatta. But people don't see because of the sectarian bias, they don't see the importance of this text. Oh, this is Mahayana text, they have nothing to do with us. No, they help us to understand even the Buddha teaching of no self also. Yeah. So this is one of the purposes of mine to introduce it to you. So here you see Buddha, Subhuti, discerning the doubt in Sariputra's mind, answers him. Yeah. Subhuti is saying, is what Sariputra was thinking in mind, is what Subhuti is discussing the words of the Buddha himself, or is he fabricating, telling us that we have to go for not just Prajna but the perfection of Prajna, called Prajna Paramita, and so on. And he is discussing the Buddhist teaching in a way that is not familiar to me. That is to Sariputta. So Subhuti discerns in mind answer like this. Whatever, let me read to you, whatever the Bhagavad disciples teach, all that is to be known as the Tathagata's direct effectuation. This is my translation. And the word is Shiyong. I don't want to explain too much to you. It's a direct contribution, not indirect. This is what I mean of Shiyong. So I translate as the direct effectuation. In other words, the direct teaching of the Buddha. Yeah? So Subhuti is saying, whatever the disciples teach, even these disciples are not specified as only monks or nuns. Any disciple, this is the minor position. Whatever the Buddha's disciples teach, all that is to be known as the Buddha's, if you like, own words. To paraphrase a bit. Okay? Why? Because for whatever Dhamma taught by the Tathagata, all these diacritic remarks has gone, I don't know why. They, who are they? The disciples, in later time. They, well, even the scholars today, they are disciples of the Buddha in later time, in the 21st century, 22nd century. Yeah? They, this is an important condition. Training, first of all, they must train themselves. They must be training. They cannot be just mere scholars and speculating from their intellect. Yeah? Training in it. In it means in the Buddha teaching. Yeah? Realize its true nature. So practice realization. This have got to be there in this continuous tradition, and this tradition, the continuous flows, right, is an outflow from the direct enlightenment of the Buddha. So the Buddha attained enlightenment, he realized the supreme wisdom, he looked into reality through it as it is, and then that wisdom is transmitted in space-time, yeah, through traditions, continuous traditions. So tradition is extremely important. Tradition cannot be discarded. We try to be smart and say, today, no, we don't need this, we have to adapt to modern situation. Of course, we need adaptation, but adaptation must be on the basis of the authentic tradition. So I don't advocate the rejection of traditions. I think that we must love our traditions, whether you are Theravadins, whether you are Mahayanis, and go on and promote your own tradition. But everybody must have this objectivity to see the true teaching of the Buddha in the totality of Buddhism beyond the boundaries of sectarianism. Yeah? What we want is the true Dharma, not just the mere tradition, even though we must love our tradition. Yeah? So, whatever is taught by the Dhamma, the Dhamma is the real teaching of the Buddha. Okay? I'm going to repeat this in the Mahavihara. Maybe I have time to expound more. So, they train, they come to realization, training, realization, then they realize reality, the true nature of dharmas, and they preserved it, they hold it in mind. Having realized and held its true nature, then what then? So first you have the preconditions. Then whatever they teach is not contradictory to its true nature, the reality. In fact, it is just an emanation, or Professor Khyentse's translation, outpouring. The word, this is the Sanskrit word, if you can understand, Nishanda. Chinese is Deng Liu. It flows down, right? From where? The ultimate source of Buddha's enlightenment, Buddha's wisdom. Yeah? And it flows down, and this flow must be continuous. And in this continuous tradition, there must be real practice, training. There must also not just training, but there must be spiritual realizations. So if these conditions are fulfilled, then whatever the disciples in the tradition preach cannot possibly be contradictory to the true nature, because it's based on, ultimately, is traceable to the Buddha's wisdom. This is their argument. So in that way, what they teach then is not contradictory to its true nature. Because it is just an emanation, outflow, flowing out, tang liu, of the Buddha's Dharma teaching. Whatever they are expounding as the true nature of that Dharma, they do not cause it to contradict to the true nature. Because they have this whole solid tradition, continuous, in which there is practice, there is realization. So you can say the Abhidharma expositions, right, at least the good aspects of it, right, can be understood in this way, and also Mahayana also. So in that way you can unify all the different traditions. What you want is the true Dharma. Yeah, there's a the Chinese important teaching, 依法不依人. Have you heard this? You must rely on the Dharma, not the person. And that person in the broad sense can mean the whole tradition. It doesn't mean that you reject your guru, your teacher. You have to respect them, you have to tune in, learn from them, learn from the traditions. But it mustn't be based on blind adherence. Right? So Buddhists must be themselves critical. This is also Theravada teaching. Like think of the Kalama Sutta, for instance. You know what I'm talking about, right? So what you want is the Dhamma, is the Fa, not the Ren, not the tradition. But you also love and respect the tradition. I'm going to talk about this, I hope, in one of my next 2 lectures. So whatever they are expounding as a true nature of Dharma, they do not cause a conflict with the true, with the true nature of reality. Hence it is Abhidharma. Hence it is Buddha Vachana. Hence is Buddha-Dharma. Yeah, the hence is sutras in the real sense. So just that the Mahayana is just like the Theravada. They put Evam Maya Sutta, Evam Maya Sutram in Sanskrit. If the Pali people can put Evam Maya Suttam and then still they accept as a true teaching of the Buddha, why not the Sanskrit text? Why not the Mahayana text? Yeah, why not the Abhidharmas? Yeah. Finally, it's already well beyond time. Let me introduce some other interesting material representing the Abhidharma tradition in contrast to the Sūtra Sarthadika traditions, and they want to emphasize that Abhidharma is actually concerned with practice, with realization. I have told you that, right? Now, this is what they talk about. You people are interested in what they call vipassana, right? Mindfulness and all these things. But these are precisely the concerns of Abhidharma. Yeah. So the Mahavibhasha, in very early time, Mahavibhasha, the material that went into the Mahavibhasha, the great commentary, actually must be even before the modern era, and the completion of the fullest version, translated by Xuanzang, must have taken place around the middle of the second century CE. So it's very, very early. And this is what this text says. Those who mostly cultivate the requisites, ziliang, sambhara, of insight, the vipassana. So vipassana is a Sanskrit word. Those who cultivate the vipassana as spiritual requisites are those who, at the stage of preparatory effort, that is before you really gain true spiritual realization, I put it in the simplest way, that that stage is called preparatory effort, prayoga, jiaxing. Always delight in studying and reflecting on the Tripitaka. So this is the place, this is the role of studies. Buddhism, Abhidharma give its due place. It doesn't reject intellectual studies. It's due recognized. But of course, you cannot be just stuck at intellectual study. But you need to study. You don't shy away from scholarship. Be a good scholar if you can. You know, acquire all this scholarly equipment. But your ultimate concern should be with liberation. Today we can cultivate that, inculcate that kind of attitude in Buddhist scholarship. I think it's a very important contribution. At the stage of preparation, always there are people who delight in studying and reflecting on the Tripitaka. But this is at the stage of preparation only. Yeah? And this stage is indispensable. Yeah? But they will go on to enter into direct realization of the truths and to be transformed into a so-called Buddhist saint, an Arya, Sheng. We say, 转凡成圣. This is the purpose of practice, right? The purpose of study, not for the mere sake of study. That's how Buddhist study should differ from ordinary academic or scholarly studies. But study is also extremely important as a preparation. And these are the people, if they have sincerity, if they have commitment, spirit commitment, if they practice, if they have faith, ultimately they will come to spiritual realization, come to the vipassana, come to the insight. Yeah. Then, at the time when this happens, right? So in the state of study, what do they study? They repeatedly examine the specific and general characteristics of Dharma. That means, what are the forces in the universe? What are the factors that, occur in the mental makeup? When we perceive a thing, what happens? You have the chitta, you have the cetasika. You know what they're talking about? The analysis of what is called psychology. But the so-called Buddhist psychology is much more beyond and much more profound than what is understood as psychology in the ordinary sense. So, all this is studying about the different dhammas, the different forces in the universe operating on us, externally, internally, physically, mentally, you might say spiritually. Yeah. So this is. Study is not just scholarly study. This is what I want to say. These are topics of, in fact, fundamental topic of Abhidharma. Abhidharma is precisely, we have seen, Dharma Pravachaya. Yeah? The discernment of Dharmas. So to understand the true nature of all the existent entity, all the forces in the universe. If you say, I want to know why I am disturbed, why do I have depression, how do I overcome this? First, you must know what caused this depression, what caused these unwholesome states, and then how do I cultivate the wholesome mental state, encourage them to come out. Yeah. Okay. So you have the so-called study, examine the dhammas. It is a study. It's examination. This is an integral part of Abhidharma. Yeah. But the ultimate purpose is to lead you to gain what is, in this context, vipassana, to gain insight. When they enter into the noble path, that means when they become an Arya. Do you understand? When they gain spiritual insight, they are called the vipassana type. Look at this kind of wording. You can see that it is certainly praxis-orientated. Relation-oriented. This is Abhidharma. So in other words, what they're saying is, at the stage of accumulating, collecting the requisites on the journey, spiritual journey, yes, you have to study, you have to even do punya, you have to do dana, all these are important things. Don't shy away from them. Cultivate a positive mind, a mind of giving, a mind of offering, a mind of respect and faith, all this. Yeah? And then study, don't shy away from them. Oh yeah, I'm interested in meditation, I'm interested in vipassana, I don't need studies. These are all scholarly stuff. Very wrong attitude. That's why these people don't appreciate Abhidharma. So this sutra, this passage that I've just quoted states that these are all what is called requisites, necessary as what is called preparatory effort. But one day you have to enter into the noble path. Otherwise, all your studies, all your merits you gain and so on, your good behavior will be in vain. They must all lead you to the point of realization. This is the true goal of Abhidharma. Then at that time they are called the Vipassana Tat. How interesting! So they speak in terms of Samatha Vipassana. And this is in Abhidharma. So I believe that the main concern of Abhidharma is actually meditation and realizations. This is, although I don't have time to go too much into it, I think this will suffice to illustrate the point. Finally, let me quote another passage in the Abhidharma Bhashya, which I gave 2 days ago in Chinese. So here I'm translating the Sanskrit, not the Chinese now, into English for you. So in this text called You Shall Learn, Abhidharma Bhashya, this is what it says. It's about Abhidharma. Why is Abhidharma important? Why the Buddha taught the Abhidharma? Or in fact, it tells you who taught the Abhidharma. The answer is the Buddha himself. But in the sense we have seen, not that the Buddha directly word by word, composed the Abhidharma text, but the Abhidharma text were compiled on the basis of the scattered teachings of the Buddha in the sutras. Do you understand? We have said that. So here is the verse. If you know some Chinese, you can read yourself. We have no time. I already explained that night. I won't repeat it. I'm translating now, not from the Chinese, but from the Sanskrit. But Chinese translation is basically very literal. He says that this is the translation. Since apart from the discernment of dharmas. Now I hope you have understood one thing from my talk. Discernment of dharmas means Abhidharma. It means also wisdom. But discernment of dharma is wisdom. So Abhidharma is the discernment of dharmas that equals discernment of dharma, which equals pure wisdom. This is what Abhidharma is. Abhidharma is not scholarship. Yeah. So apart from this, i.e. apart from Abhidharma, then there is no excellent means for the appeasement of defilement. So why do we need Abhidharma, in other words? Because we want to appease, we want to subdue defilements, not for the sake of being respectable, moral human beings. No. That is in order to come to a state when our mind is not disturbed, not perturbed by these so-called defilements. That is the purpose of whatever you call it, Theravada or Mahayana or any form of Buddhism. That is a purpose, to come to a state of appeasement, mental appeasement. Hence, that's why we talk about eradication of defilements. Yeah. So in that sense, Buddhism is not also a moral system. No. Some people say, all religion teach you to be good. That's all, full stop. I think Buddhism goes so far beyond that. Anyway, I don't have time to elaborate on that. I think you know. Okay. And it is on account of the defilements. The thing is, it's on account of the defilements that being wander in samsara. Right? Dukkha means we cannot transcend samsara. We can't transcend samsara because we have defilements. We don't observe precept because it is a requirement of the Buddhist tradition. It is expected by the teachers or by the Buddha or whoever. No, not like that. That's not Buddhism. Buddhism is not authoritarian. Yeah? But we understand the Buddha's recommendation that if we want to gain peace of mind, this is what we want today. People suffer, they have depression, they have psychological problems, and they have conflict, they want to kill others, they want to destroy another culture, another country. Because they're disturbed by, the mind is disturbed. The mind is disturbed. And in Buddhism we call this defilement, fan now. This is fan now. Yeah? That's the purpose of practice. The purpose of observing precept. You don't kill not because it's a commandment, thou shalt not kill. Not like that is an authoritarian structure like Christianity. The Buddha tells you not to destroy other lives, and then in practicing that, you're practicing compassion, bring out your innate human virtue of compassion. Then you feel that you're oneness of others, you transcend the boundary of the self. Through this, ultimately, you can realize anatta. That's the purpose of all these precepts. Not for the sake of being nice and obedient Buddhist, like nice and little good school kids, obeying the school system or the tradition. Yeah, so it is for the appeasement of defilements. Because if our mind is perturbed, we continue to wander in samsara, we continue to suffer. We cause suffering to ourselves and society at large. So for this reason, because this is the reason of Abhidharma then, for this reason, therefore, it is said that the Abhidharma is taught by the Master, i.e. the Buddha. So, you answer several important questions. Who taught the Abhidharma? They say it's the Buddha. But they also say that not in the sense of the Buddha having directly word by word dictated the Abhidharma text, but the later disciples compiled the Buddhist text. So, the Abhidharma text. Abhidharma text were compiled by the disciples later. But the compilation is based on the teaching from the sutras. Hence, recall what I've quoted in the Mahayana Sutra statements and also Sanghabhata. In that sense, it comes from a continuous flow tradition in which there is practice, training, and realization. Hence, it is Buddha Vachana. It's the same insight, the same enlightenment that flows on and on and on, and at every point of time. No deviation from that. Then we must be Buddha Vachana, okay? Through Buddha-Dharma. Okay, let me come to the conclusion. Therefore, we can conclude very briefly. First, I agree that it is true that the Sutra or the Sutta constitute the absolute authority of the Buddha's teachings. Yes. In that sense, the sutras are of central importance. Yeah? The early Buddhist discourses, i.e. the Pali Suttas, for instance, the Agama text, for instance, must be respected and regarded as the Buddha Vachana. What is Buddha-Dharma? Buddha-Dharma are the early discourses, and the Buddha Vachana. Number two, yes, Abhidharma is developed later. Later than Vinaya and Sutra. Yeah? However, number three, we need not, of course, agree with the Abhidharmika claim, or the claim. We don't think that everything claimed by the Abhidharma expert is valid. But I think they have said something, many things that are extremely meaningful, extremely reasonable. Yeah. However, so we need not accept or agree with all their claim. However, Abhidharma is a very important contribution because it provides a systematic and developed methodology. What we need is a methodology, is to discern the true meaning of the true import of the Buddha teaching in the sutras. So therefore you see the relationship between Sutra and Abhidharma. Approach properly, when the Abhidharma is approached in this properly, again also of course it requires some critical attitude. It can help us to discern the true Nitara teachings, Liao Yi, Nitara teachings in the sutras. And this is in respect of both, not just doctrine but also practice. You have seen that. The Abhidharma because say that the study, examinations and intellectual study are actually very important, but there are preparations. You need that preparation, and then if you continue to understand and feel inspired and then proceed to practice and realize, then you enter into the noble path. Then you become transformed into an Arya. So therefore, Abhidharma contributes in respect of both doctrines and practice. I think that's, I'm sorry, they have gone far beyond time, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Venerable, for such a profound exposition on the subject matter, Sutra or Abhidharma. I think it is a departure from our usual simple Dharma talk. So some of us might be listening with awe, or some of us might be listening lost. But I think it's perfectly okay. At least we begin to see the importance of the subject matter, and how this subject matter, if we see it clearly, would help us in our way of learning the Dhamma. At least it's better than our usual way of some arguing for the Dhamma, arguing for the Sutra, and some arguing on the Abhidharma, but always very superficially, without any facts and figures or any knowledge, just shock sendiri. I like this means I like this, I like that means I like that. But when we listen to the Bante's talk, then we begin to realize that there's a vast amount of knowledge that we are still lacking. And that's why it is important that we must hold such talks at least from time to time. When I first contacted Brother Chiwat, I told him this will be a departure from our usual Dharma talk. And he said, it's good. We need to elevate our standard a bit. Okay? So now without further ado, we shall now invite our reverends to officiate the opening of the launching of the books. And perhaps Bante would like to introduce a little bit of the books first?
Of course.
Or you want to introduce after the launching? After the
No, the launching means my introduction to the books. And then,
okay.
Yeah. Without
so
that, it's not
introduce the
launching.
books, then after that
Let me, how do I get out of this? Okay, wait a minute. And so, I want to bring out the other file. Okay, I'm grateful to the devotees of San Bao Tang. I gave them a very short notice before I came. They organized so many things and so brilliantly, so efficiently, And these slides are done by them. I don't have to worry about it. Yeah. So now, it is entitled Launching of New Books. But let me say that there may be only 3 books are really new. Yeah. And the other books are not quite new. One has gone through 5 editions, so they're not new, but they are new to Malaysia. The new people, nobody pay attention to them. So today, the chance for me to share with you about the, I hope, the importance of the contribution, a humble contribution of this book. Okay, now the first new book is actually this one, which is the Chinese translation of my book called Sarvasya Abhidharma, and translated by my PhD students, and two have finished the PhD. One is about to submit his dissertation. Yeah. And it's a translation of this English book. This English book is called Sarvasya Abhidharma. Today you listen, you have heard quite a bit about the scope, the standpoint, the nature of Abhidharma, the importance of Abhidharma. Yeah. And in this book, I survey. I offer a complete survey of the Abhidharmas, predominantly, of course, Sarvasya Abhidharma, but then you also have some Sautrandika doctrines also. So you can see that it's a comprehensive survey, but it's a very large book. Originally, there were over 700 pages, so I condensed them a bit in the later traditions. This book was compiled after my appointment as a chair professor, Nomada chair professor in Canada in 2000. In the year 2000, I was invited to be the chair professor for the year, and I had to give a very systematic handouts to the students, and then I came back and put them together into the book form. Yeah? And I published that, I think in 2001 or 2002. That's the first edition is much smaller, and surprisingly, it was sold out even before the year ended. And then I put up the second edition and slightly revised it, and then the third edition. And then in 2004. At the beginning of 2000, I went to Hong Kong. Yeah. After that, we published, I think, at least 2 editions by the University of Hong Kong of the same book, but expanded. Yeah. And then eventually, when I founded the Buddha-Dharma Center, we also published from our center. Yeah. So this is a quick survey of it. It discusses the origin, the meaning and the function of Abhidharma, and I have touched on some of this today. Yeah, and then who are the Abhidharmikas, and what do they study? What constitutes Abhidharmika? It should be Abhidharmika or Abhidharmika. Both are okay. Yeah? So the second is the standpoint, scope, and the methodology is very important. I have emphasized that Abhidharma is actually a systematic, rigorous methodology. For what? For understanding the sutras, for understanding the Buddha's Dharma. And number 3 is I discussed the different schools, the notion of the Riya in the Sarvasya. What is a Riya? What's a Riya existence? A true existence, as opposed to, for instance, a pure imagination, like the turtle's hair. And a rabbit's horn. These are the famous ancient examples of absolute non-existent things. And also conceptual existence, like a human being. Human being is also a reality, but it's a relative one only, because it is not an absolute real, because the human being can be composed, can be analyzed into, or is composed of the so-called 5 khandhas, that the 5 aggregates and so on. So what is real? What's a real? What is a real? What's a real entity? This chapter is very philosophical. Then the 4th chapter surveys the canonical text, the 7 texts of Abhidharma, and also, of course, the important commentary today. I have mentioned a couple of them. One is the great commentary called Mahavibhasha, Tapivasa Lun. And then the Abhidharma Bhashya, and Jnanasaras. This is a survey of the major literature of the Sarvastivada, Abhidharma. And then number 5 also is very philosophical. It examines the notion of so-called Tri-Temporal existence of dharmas. Dharmas not only exist in the present, but when the dharma becomes past, it still continues to exist. In what sense then? And then even in the so-called future, it's already existent. In what sense? Yeah, and of course, time is just a perception. There's no absolute reality of time. This is in all schools of Buddhism. We perceive events, what happens before, what happens after, and what is happening right now. Then we experience time. It's very interesting. They say time is relative. Even space is relative. So it's highly philosophical chapter. Then the next one is about causality. There are 2 chapters on causality, and particularly among the 6 causes, there's extremely interesting, important innovation. That is the doctrine of simultaneous causality. That is to say, normally we experience an effect after experiencing a cause. Cause comes first and then followed by effect, right? But now they're arguing that there's a type of causality that is simultaneous. At the very time a cause comes to existence, at that very same time the effect comes to existence. So it's difficult to imagine that. So they argue that in fact this is the paradigm of causality in Abhidharma. And it was hotly debated, thoroughly rejected by the Sautrandicas I refer to, those who are based on the Sūtra, one group of Buddhists like that. But the Sarvastivada emphasized that it is very, very important to recognize this type of causality. Not the before-after type, but the simultaneous type. Yeah? And in fact, they go further and say that this constitutes true causalities. Yeah? So what it means, and I would like you to read that type of causality. Today, you can appreciate, understand it more in terms of quantum physics. There's this kind of phenomena. Okay, then chapter 7. Chapter 7 discusses the 4 conditions and the 5 corresponding fruits, or the effects, in other words, of the causes. Then chapter 8 is on matter. What is materiality? What is matter? And then one type of matter in the Sarvastivada is called Abhijapti. It's actually karmic efficacy. So karmic efficacy is considered as material in much sense. So therefore it involves a notion of materiality that is not the ordinary type that we normally understand. So what is material for us is something that I can see, right? Material things. And something that is resistant. You can place 2 things at the same spot. You understand? This is materiality, the basic characteristic of materiality. But now they propose that there is a type of materiality that is in fact invisible and non-resistance. You think of today, things like that, dark matter and all this interesting phenomena like in quantum physics. I think these kind of doctrines in ancient time should provide important clue and inspiration for scientific investigation even. A very interesting chapter. Then chapter 9 is about mind. You might say Buddhist psychology. Mind and mental states, you can say. Mental coefficients, so Chitta, Chaitasika, in Pali Chaitasika. Then chapter 10 about knowledge, different manifestation, different modes of operation of knowledge. Also an interesting chapter. And 11 is a very important, again, innovation by Sarvastivada Abhidharma. In Theravada Abhidharma, you always have only the duality between matter and mind, nama, rupa. In Sarvastivada, it goes beyond that. And it says that there are real entity, real forces in the universe that affect human experiences, but these forces are neither material nor mental, but nonetheless equally real. Very interesting notion. So they broke the boundary of this dualism, of mind-body dualism. Yeah. So discuss about this so-called conditioning destroyed from thoughts. Then defilements I've talked about today. What is defilement? How they operate, how they are overcome, and so on. Look at, as you go through, you realize the scope, the concern of Abhidharmikas. They're not just scholarship. It's about human existences. What affect a human? What affect the human experiences? Yeah. Then also doctrine of karma. Yeah, extremely important, interesting chapter. I have two chapters. One on doctrine of karma. The other one is karmic retribution vipaka. And then chapter 15 should be a very large chapter, but then I have to think of the scope also. Anyway, it discusses about the different stages of practice, and the methods of meditations, and the stages, corresponding stages that a practitioner can attain. And this is a very major concern of Abhidharma text. Look at the Abhidharma Bhasha, the text I mentioned. A large portion of discussion is centered around spiritual practice. So you must say it's just scholasticism. Of course, it has elements of scholasticism. Yes, it is scholarly, but it is not mere scholarship. Then finally, the unconditioned. What are the unconditioned forces that affect us? They don't manifest in time space, but they nonetheless impact on human experiences. And so you have 16 chapters here, and it's a big book. And this is already the 5th edition. The 6th is going to come out soon. And this is the translation of this text. Okay, this is the new book. Then I want to talk about this Sanskrit book I mentioned. When I started teaching Sanskrit and I look around and I realized that there are many important, very good introductory texts for Sanskrit grammar, but unfortunately none of them was based on Buddhist materials. They all are based on Hindu materials. The Buddhist students do not have time and energy or even the interest to want to get into these Buddhist Hindu doctrines and terminologies. So I decided to compile one that is completely based on Sanskrit Buddhist material. And I have chosen the text I mentioned called the Ashta Sahasrika Pratyaparidat. 8,000 lines. From day one, you learn Buddhist terminology like Buddha, Bodhisattva, Arhat, Tathagata, and Karuna, all this. And then slowly you are led to read simple sentences and more complex sentences and then passages. And systematically, you are being taught the grammar, say, starting from the present tense, for instance, and the two cases, the subject case, the object case, so-called nominative and accusative case. And then the next lesson will be instrumental case now introduced, and then in the first lesson you have say a word like Buddha, masculine noun ending in a. And then the second lesson we have a word like pala, which is a neuter noun now, how they are declined, and then at the same time, prajna is another type of noun that ends with long a, not short a. like Panya. So systematically I lead you on to different grades and levels of Sanskrit grammar, and corresponding to each lesson, I spend a lot of effort finding the suitable examples from these texts called the Ashtasvachika Prajnaparamita, the corresponding sentences, to illustrate as example as well as for exercises. So not a single sentence or single phrase is fabricated by me. They're all taken from the sutras. So you're not just learning Sanskrit grammar, you're learning Buddhism, you're learning particularly I would say Mahayana Buddhism. So I think this because the whole of Chinese Buddhism is based on text translated from Sanskrit. So let me give you a quick some examples. Okay, now in the exercises, this is they have taken from the Chinese one. It's the same thing, translation. See, all these sentences, the Heart Sutra is there, the Diamond Sutra. You know Diamond Sutra? The Vajrasattva Sutra, Jinggang Jing. You learn all this, the sentences are taken from them, and then all the vocabularies are given. And all the annotations, the necessary ones are provided. And the exact page number, you can look at the different sources and so on. This is the Heart Sutra, this is the Vajrasattva Sutra, and then of course, this is one exercise. In each lesson, I have, like say, 1A, 1B. You see, 1B would be based on the Diamond Sutra and the Heart Sutra. But these are the most inspiring for the Chinese Buddhists. They know almost by heart. Then 1A is based on that Prajnaparamita text. So you can see that all the references are given to you, and also Xuan Zhang's Chinese translation, corresponding Chinese translation. Xuan Zhang and Kumarajiva's are given to you. You can compare them to the Sanskrit and you learn like that. Okay? Then in the at the back, can you bring one copy? The Sanskrit book. The blue one here. This one. Give me a copy. The last one. At least you must look at this. Okay, this is the book, and at the back, I have given an expanded vocabulary, right? So, like this, for instance, you have all the Sanskrit words that occur in this text, in the alphabetical orders, and then you have the important corresponding Chinese, Chinese, and then you have the Tibetan also, and then with the English explanation. So it's like a dictionary for you. You can learn the Sanskrit word. You can even learn your Chinese, your classical Buddhist Chinese, and you can learn Tibetan if you are keen. So it's a huge portion. It goes into something like so much. It's like a dictionary. Maybe about 30-40 pages, or maybe 50 pages. Okay, so as far as you know, this is the only book that uses material from Buddhist Sutra. There is another one by Professor Adjutant. I think many people know that, but that book is focused on what they call hybrid Sanskrit. I focus on what I believe to be proper Sanskrit in proper sense, even though they are not Sanskrit used by the Hindus or the other communities, but I think the Buddhists have every right, to compose a work in good Sanskrit, and this should be learned and should be exposed to the followers of Buddhism. So I hope in that way it's a humble contribution. Yeah, anybody can learn Sanskrit from day one. You don't need to know anything. Start from the very beginning. No prior knowledge is presupposed. This is the Sanskrit, and this is the new one, the Chinese translation by another student of mine who is now an associate professor at Renmin University, Venerable Yayasan, who studied under me when I was teaching in Sri Lanka. He got it PhD under me. Yeah. Okay. This book is about meditation practice. It's a collection of my published essays, yeah, in this area. Like it has, for instance, a chapter on the 16 mode mindfulness of breathing, and then the 6 stage mindfulness of breathing, and then and what you know as metta bhavana, maitri bhavana, and the 4 apramanas. And then this one is a paper extremely interesting about the meditative experience of what they call adimoksha. You know, a meditator can enter into such a state of mind through visualization that he feels everywhere is full of, every human being is a skeleton, that he will see skeleton, you know, and he can experience earth as gold, yeah, water as earth. He really through experience. So that raises the question as to what is reality. Why, you know, we this is so real, solid to us, but this just a correlation to a particular state of consciousness of ours. So this is the phenomena called adimoksha, adimukti. Extremely interesting, and we believe that it prepares the student. It paves the way for the development of the Yogacara doctrine of Vyapti Matrata, the mind only doctrine. Then there's a chapter on Ashubha meditation, on the impurity. You know what I mean. And then this chapter is also very interesting. Number 6 is a very new essay of mine. From the experience of impurity to purity. Impurity leads to experiencing impurity in meditation leads to the experience of purity. And I link this up to the Theravada text also. The Sanskrit tracing back to the Pali Sutta. It's a very interesting one. This one is about the preparatory stages leading to the stage of entry into the noble path, and transforming an ordinary worldling into an Arya. And of course, this is all meditative. And this one, the final one, is discussion on the notion of the hindrance of meditation, right? And what it is according to Sūtra Abhidharma. And this. I think better known notions for those who follow Pali Buddhism. You know, Panya Vimukta. Have you heard of this? Ubayata Vimukta, Bhaga Vimukta, Chitta Vimukta, Panya Vimukta, and these topics. So there are 8 chapters. This is on more specifically on meditation. Okay. This book. This book is a book on. It's also very philosophical, on perception and cognitions. How does perception take place in Buddhism, in the Abhidharma? What do we perceive? What perceives? What is perceived? And is what is perceived real, to what extent is real, and so on, you see. For instance, the Sūtra explains that we never ever know the external world directly. It's there outside, they don't deny it. Unlike the Mahayanists, unlike the Yogacharis who deny the independent existence of external reality, they accept external reality, but then they say that we never ever know external reality directly. All we know, all knowledge is derived from the mind. There's the picture image is like a camera, yeah, that goes into the mind, and as we gain knowledge of what has been perceived in the preceding moment, that thing is already not there. So we get the knowledge from the image in the mind. It's very interesting. This is one example of the type of interesting doctrines. It's also very philosophical. And in all these texts, in the first text and also in this text, I have given a lot of explanation and translation from these complicated texts like the Jnananusara by Sanghabhadra. You will find them there, okay? And this is translated into Chinese, again by two of my students, PhD students. And you can have a quick glimpse of it, and you can see what I discussed. If you know Chinese. Then in recent years, I also published a book for Pali studies. This may be more relevant to members here who are into Theravada Buddhism. And I find I'm not satisfied with the textbook that are available today. So I produced my own textbook and lead you systematically from simpler Pali sentences to more and more complex one. But each sentence, each passage is taken from the sutras. And all examples and exercises are fully glossed. So this is reading Buddhist Pali text, and there is a Chinese translation for it. This one is Chinese translation by another student of mine in Hong Kong. Okay, and this one finally is this one maybe I should talk about. This is not published by us, by the University of Hong Kong, and it's a felicitation volume for me. Do you understand what a felicitation volume is? It's a volume kind of dedicated in honor to a scholar. I was their professor, and they form a committee, and they invite international scholars who are connected with me, to contribute, and then they have a ceremony. This is called felicitation, and it contains important essay contributions by very eminent scholars like Professor Smith-Townsend, for instance, who is now the authority on Yogacara in the West, from University of Hamburg. He's retired now. And Professor Eddie Franco and so on. All these are very good scholars. So I think it's worth reading. Okay. The price of this is a little bit higher than the rest because we have no control over it, because it was not published by us. So I think that's enough to introduce you, and you have one or two other books. Of course, I'm here if you want me to sign for you.